Second question, was it really that bad? I'd like to have you do your own reading and thinking about that. As we talked about Rome, and as we talked about brutal Rome, and as we talked about deaths, and as we talked about takeovers, and as we talked about imprisonment, that's something that happened thousands of years ago. It couldn't happen now, right? Wrong. Later on in other modules, you're going to be finding that that happened exactly in Canada, that people were arrested for their language, their religion, they had their families shattered in exactly the same way that the Romans were doing it then. Was the horrible thing is that it's always done out of good intentions. So, was it really that bad? Yes. I'm going to let you come to your own conclusions on that. Here's an interesting one. Is colonization a thing of the past? Is this something that happened then, so long ago, that yeah, it happened then, and yes, it was a terrible thing, but does it have anything to do with me now? I'd like you to remember that piece as we go into the next chunk. The thing about Rome is that prior to Rome, and this is why Rome. Why Rome? Why Rome? Not because I'm a big fan of the Roman Empire, but in my own reading and in my own studying my enemy. You know, you're supposed to get to know your enemy. You should get to know your enemy intimately. You should embrace your enemy and hold him to your heart. As I've pursued colonization, and as I think of colonization as a terrible affront to human rights, my readings personally led me to think what I'm thinking today, which is that I like to try to imagine why would this happen, because I would never assume, to me, a simplistic way of thinking that humans are good or humans are evil. I think that humans are humans, and in fact, I think that most generally, humans are well-intentioned. We have evil humans, or humans who do bad things, but that the happenstance of history isn't that simple. And I think if we fall into simplistic thinking, like these guys were the good guys and these guys were the bad guys, this is a bad way to think. I mean, we probably know, I hope, knock on wood, that, for instance, the Gulf War, I'm just going to pick on that one, that the news that we got from the Gulf War, that there was some things going on there, we went in there and we did stuff, and boy, you know, the good guys won and the bad guys lost. This is what we found out from our media. I hope we really don't believe that. If we could talk to the individuals in the army that served there, and if we could talk, if we had an idea about what's actually going on, we wouldn't fall into those types of ideas. And this is getting into this colonization, a thing of the past. When we think that we are watching the news and what's going on in Lebanon or Ireland or anywhere, this news is highly edited by the time it gets to us, especially in non-Western countries, And so we really need to think about that. So in my personal readings and my personal studies, I thought, how can that happen? How can colonization even happen? You know, if we don't have like evil human beings, well, how could it happen? And so I went backwards and backwards and backwards. And to my mind, this is why I say, this is what I think now. Maybe in 10 years from now I won't think this, or maybe I'll add to it, or adapt it, or modify it. But right now it seems like my studies have led me to believe that Rome, being the first great colonizer, provided a template for other colonizers in a way that had never been done on the world stage before. And if we think of it, how? I'm just going to scratch these down here. I didn't intend to. Rome was the first one that standardized a language. Before Rome came along with its empire, languages had never been standardized. Eventually, under Rome, Latin became standardized and became the language of the citizenry. You didn't have a choice. Laws were standardized, so that no matter where you were, you had to follow Roman law. There was just no two ways about it. Money, as we talked about, was standardized. for the very first time, that no matter where you went in the huge extent of the empire, and it covered a lot of ground, it was the same money everywhere. Two other ones. The government was standardized so that no matter how far you were from Rome, you absolutely followed Roman law, Roman government. That had never been done before. Now, if we think about the history of humanity, what had been? Had peoples taken over other peoples? Absolutely. Had peoples had wars and occupation? Well, wars, yes. Occupation? Yeah. But never to this standard. You had people who would sweep in and destroy, and rape and pillage and loot and plunder and leave. Or you had people who would sweep in, rape and pillage and loot and plunder and establish outposts. But you never had the standardized version of a takeover in that way. And it distresses me to say this, because I'm not anti-religion and I'm not anti-God. It's my personal belief, this is me, that I think that the Word of God, as interpreted, served the purposes of the government, and it was changed. You know, the people who are watching this, I mean, God knows, no pun intended, that you should find God as you will. You should find the Creator. You should find love. You should find support. You should find happiness. You should find God as you do. And that's a human right. They didn't have that chance here, because religion, as interpreted, underscored everything. Remember, as we were talking about the rationale for many things. And that bothers me to talk about that. But why Rome? 5 huge reasons. First time in the history of the world, these things have been standardized. Now, in Canada today, it's hard, it's easy to just take these things for granted, you know, that we can phone up, I don't know, we can phone up Rogers Video located out of India and get an English-speaking person on the other end. We don't even think about that, because the world has become so standardized that we have taken it for granted, and maybe we've never questioned the standardization of the world. Now, this last question, what does this have to do with me now? Well, that's the interesting part. You know, you foster parents, I think, have some of the biggest hearts in the world. But consider what you do. You take in children that are disadvantaged or have problems or difficulties or all kinds of situations, and you take children into your hearts and into your homes. If you took in children that were based on an ethnicity, or based on a cultural values that are different than yours, or that their hair is different, or that they're accustomed to different ways of living, and if you took in children into your homes based on those types of rules, I don't think, you tell me, talk amongst yourselves, would you be the foster parents that you are? If colonization has some things that have become normalized, and I don't know if that's a good thing or not, to tell you the truth. Is it a thing of the past? If we think about the Western taking over the world, so that, like I say, if we need to phone videos or cables or computers and we end up talking to somebody in Bombay and they speak English. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, I don't really know. That's a complicated answer. So, but some things from Rome are definitely negative. And some of the things that were definitely negative is that Rome had zero tolerance for a diversity of language. Rome had zero tolerance for a diversity of religion. Rome had zero tolerance for skin color. Rome had zero tolerance for a different way of looking at the world. And all of those deficiencies that Rome had, you have none of as foster parents. And I think I wanted to talk to you, and I was pretty interested and excited to talk to you about colonization and Rome, because it gave the template for the world as we know it now. In all of these things that had happened then are happening now. In the law, in a court of law, we have, if you do something wrong against somebody else, you hire a lawyer to speak on your behalf, and then they hire a lawyer to speak on their behalf, and you and the person never actually talk. Your lawyers do, and then maybe you get to court and you have a jury. You know, that's Roman ripped off from the Greek. We don't know that because it's so normal. In child welfare, when you become a child welfare worker, or in a court of law game, what do you swear on? You swear on the Bible. We have huge elements of these gigantic standards that's very much a part of our lives today. And this is why I wanted to talk about this, because it's so huge and so normalized that we don't even realize that anymore. That there was a place where a standard of language, law, money, government, and religion came from. And this is where it came from. What does it have to do with you now? I think that it will make you a better human being if you are able to appreciate how the past has impacted the present. And look where you are now. You do none of the things, none of the horrible things that has happened in colonization. You do exactly the opposite. You take all these children in, regardless of diversity. And that's a wonderful thing. So I hope that you can see, I hope that this has given you some ideas about colonization, where does it come in, and where did it come from? As you go through your other modules, and you learn about different aspects of history and present day, I hope that this gives you a kind of a platform as to say, where did these ideas come from in the first place? When you're going to be talking about residential schools, when you're going to be talking about colonial policy, where did it come from? It came from Rome. With that, I'd like to say that I thank you for this experience. I wish you all the best, and take care of yourselves.